Hello and welcome to another pygame tutorial. In this video I'll cover a method for programmatically casting 2D shadows like the ones you're seeing now. This method creates shadows that can be updated with animated images and moving light sources, giving a flexible visual effect that can boost your game's aesthetics. All the code is available on GitHub, and if you did enjoy this video or found it useful, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Cheers! So to create shadows in pygame, we're going to start off with a very basic game skeleton. That doesn't really have anything apart from we've loaded in some images and we've drawn them to the screen. Running the game, we can see what we have, and we have this image of a king, an image of a tree, a sky and some grass. And what we'll be looking to do is to create a shadow of this king and cast it on the grass around here. So the first thing to do for creating a shadow is to extract the outline of the image. The easiest way to do this in pygame is to initialize a mask object, and these mask objects come with a really handy method of extracting it directly from an image or surface. So we can feed it the image of the king, and actually all that we're interested in is the outline of this mask. So we can just take like the outline like this. Down in our draw section, we can verify that this outline has been extracted correctly by drawing it as a polygon. So we're going to make this a black polygon on the screen, and we're going to draw it in the position of these extracted outline coordinates. So running the game again, yes, we have managed to extract the outline correctly. It looks good, but clearly it's in the wrong position. So the next thing for us to do is to move this outline to be on top of the player. So what we're going to do is iterate through the X and Y positions of this outline, but move it on top of the player. And we've drawn the player at 600 pixels X and 386 pixels in the Y. So this becomes X plus 600, Y plus 386 for X and Y in King Mask. Running the code again, okay, that looks good. Now our outline is on top of the player, and we can use this as the basis of our shadow, because importantly it has the correct shape. When creating a shadow, we're obviously assuming that there's some source of light, and the object itself is blocking that light and then casting a shadow. In this tutorial, we'll look at a fixed source of light. And as you can see kind of from the sky, I've sort of set the light to be on the kind of right hand side of the screen, and what we'll be looking to do is creating rays of light from this position and then casting the shadow kind of down in a diagonal fashion here. So to create our ray of light, the first thing we need to do is to define the position of the sun. And as I just said, I'm going to put this in the top right hand corner of the screen. And then a ray of light needs to travel in some direction. So where is it going to? Well, we're going to say it's going to travel from the top right hand corner of the screen towards the center of the screen, which is given by 600, 400, because that's the size of our screen. Next, we can calculate the angle of this ray of light, because that's what we'll be using when we start transforming our outline into a shadow. I'm just going to copy and paste that here because it's a little bit fiddly, but it's just using the arctan2 function and the difference in position between the origin of the light and the target of the light. Now we can start building up our shadows. So I'm going to initialize that as an empty list. And we're going to use the outline as a basis to create these shadows. So again, we're going to start iterating through the X and Y positions of our outline. And what we want to do is basically move these X and Ys onto the ground. So in that way, we're going to keep the shape of this image, which is very important. So the first thing we want to do is calculate where the Y position will be. And because we are, and we're going to call this shadow height. Because we want this shadow to kind of be like reflected onto the ground, we need to first calculate the difference between basically the reflection point. So where is our ground located? Well, it's located at 500 pixels in the Y. So the first thing we want to calculate is what is the difference between the ground and the Y position. And that will give us basically the height of the Y position from the ground. Now, as I said before, we want to add on this height onto the Y, but if we just leave it like this, then we're going to get something like this, which is not useful because these two Y's will cancel each other out, and we'll just be left with 500, which is the value of the ground. So we need to increase this difference by some scalar. This is a parameter that can be like changed and played around with. It's not very scientific, but when we start looking at these shadows in the game, you can kind of play around this value just to find a value that feels right. So we will revisit this shortly. Now that we have our shadow height, we want to calculate the width of the shadow. Because we also have the angle of the ray of light, we can use some trigonometry to calculate this length. So we're going to use math.tan sun angle for that. And now we can create this new shadow point, which will be the x position of the outline plus the shadow width, and the y position of the outline plus the shadow height. And that will form the associated shadow point for this outline position. Then finally we can append this shadow point into our list of shadow positions. And then down in the draw section, just need to replace our king mask with shadows. Running the game, we can have a look at this. And that's worked pretty well. So what have we done? We've defined our light source being up here. We've said the light source is going towards the middle of the screen, and then we've kind of cast this this image shape onto the ground, and that already has quite a good effect. Going back to the parameters that you can change, this kind of will basically define the size of the shadow. So if I really crank this up to 1.7 and rerun the code, it creates a much larger shadow. And again, there's not really like a right or wrong answer here. It's kind of just getting a feel for what looks good in the game. So I will revert this back to 1.3. And then the other thing I want to mention is, let's say you want to kind of change the light source. So let's imagine that now, or instead, that the sun position is in the top left hand corner of the screen rather than top right. We simply just have to change this, and we don't need to worry about updating any of the other code, and the shadow will be updated appropriately. So that's pretty cool, because I mean, maybe in a game you want to have like a setting sun or something, and the shadows will actually update accordingly. So that's a really cool effect. And that's there to shadows.